I'll show you how to make a bush. I go on textures.com and get you a free account, and you can get up to, they give you 15 free downloads a day. But what you want to look for are pictures with alpha backgrounds, which are transparencies. Um, I mean, you can also search Google for them or Bing images, but like this is a one that's alphas are PNG files. Um, like you're not gonna have a JPEG, it's not gonna have a transparency. So look for like PNGs. So we'll get this one and I'll go ahead and load it into Gimp, which is also a free program. Just drag it. Well, let me make a new. Let me just close it and reload it. I had something else open in there, so when it loads up, I'll just throw this in it. Alright, you see it's no background there. So it's not to the power of 2. So let me, I mean, you can use a phone. In fact, I won't worry about converting it. I'll just leave it like it is. So you got your image, you got it free off textures.com. And you load Blender. Now, I use I have part of one of the cars from the game I use for scale, just so I got an idea, the size I'm working with of something. It's just a nice reference, so you don't make something too small or too large. Um, so to make this bush, we're gonna go to add, and we're gonna say mesh and plane. We're gonna start with just a plane, which is just a flat. I'll move the car out of the way. Now you can use these over here to rotate stuff and use that to move stuff, or you can use R, and when hitting R you can hit X, Y, Z to change the different ways it rotates. But I'm going to rotate it up, and if you hold down control when you rotate, if you look up here in the left, you see that angle. I'm going to rotate it to 90 degrees. And now I'm going to go to edit, and what I'm going to do here is subdivide it. And once you do that, you can down here left click and you can increase the amount of subdivisions. That's about good. We just want a few in there. And the next thing over here, we're going to randomize it. And what that's going to do is make it so that it's not perfectly flat. Now you can, once you select that to start moving it, you can hold down shift to get, finer movement. But we're just going to give it some different variety there. Now we're going to get out of edit mode, go to object mode. We're going to go to object and say shade smooth. Alright. Now we're going to go over here to the material properties, and we're going to give it a new material. We're just going to call this new bush. We're going to name the item new bush. Go ahead and delete the light and the camera. Now with new bush selected, uh, see up here you got these different balls. These are the types of viewport shading. You can see wireframe, solid shaded, or textured, or you can use like the rendering, the viewport shade rendering. But when it's got texture selected, you can see the texture once it's applied to it. So over here in material properties, click on right next to base color and pick image texture. And now this is where you're going to open that image, which it stuck it in my downloads folder. So there it is there. Now your image may be rotated a different way. I mean, you can rotate this object, or you can go into edit mode and then go to up here at the top, UV editing. Now once you do this, you're not going to see the texture. You have to go back and reselect viewport shading. Now anything that you select here corresponds to, you know, a little box inside of here. Now these little boxes is what that square is pulling from in this texture. So you can select them all from here, or you can select them all from here. Put the same letter R, or picking this to rotate, whichever. If you know the hotkey, you can hit R. You can rotate the texture around. You can hit G to move it around. And you can see how that where I randomize those little squares, how it kind of gives it a little more variety. Now think of the game Pac-Man. If whatever goes, whenever something leaves the side, it'll start back on the other side. So you see how you go. If this is bigger than the image, it'll start to repeat the image. Now this is the scale. You can scale something and you can see how it'll start repeating because it's going beyond the boundary, or smaller and it'll make it larger. So just keep that in mind if you're modifying the texture. This is the UV coordinates. So my point was really coming over here, you can rotate it to be different. You can also hold down control to get it to lock, like click into place, so it's not difficult, or you can hold down shift and it'll move slower. So now that you got an idea how to arrange the textures, now we just want to basically make a bush. So just think of this as just one little limb of a bush. We'll go back into, we'll go hit layout to get out of this UV editing mode to make this all full screen again. And looking at our car, gives us kind of the size of this bush. So I'm going to make this a little smaller. I'm going to hit S to scale. A little smaller there. Now I'm going to go to object and I'm going to duplicate this object, or you can hit Shift D to duplicate it. Now I'm going to hit R and I'm going to rotate it around, but I want to rotate it on the X-axis. Hell, I can't ever remember which one's which. So we'll rotate it like this. Now remember, all this black is transparent. You're not going to see that in the game. You're just going to see the bush part. So the idea here is to make copies of this and kind of arrange them in a way that when the black is gone and you just see the bush, it's going to be like a 3D looking bush. You don't want it to look flat, obviously. I mean, you want it to look like it's got some shape to it. So I'm just duplicating all these parts, and I'm rotating them in different ways, and then moving them about. I mean, it's not going to be the prettiest bush. Now you can, let me show you something else. Add mesh plane. Let's make a smaller plane. Alright, this one, when I go to give it the texture, all I got to do now, since I've already created that one, is just hit this little drop down menu and pick new bush, and it automatically assigns it. But I want to go into the UV editor, and I want to change the UV so that this is smaller. I just want to really get just a little small part of this. So I'm going to scale it down. I'm going to hit G to move it so that it's just got like a little corner piece like that. There we go. That's what I'm trying to do. See? I'm going to go back to my layout, and I'm going to scale it just a little smaller. Alright. Now I didn't give it the little crinkle look, so let me do that real quick. You can see once again how to do that. You can also just hit this loop cut, and you see how I put that little yellow line there? You can manually cut it into these little squares. So you can do that too. And then go to, with them all selected, didn't mean to do that. But this is the selection box here. With them all selected, go to this randomize. If you don't see randomize, hold down the button. This is what you'll normally see is smooth. You hold down the button, the left button, and you can pick the other thing. And so I'm gonna move this, start to move it, hold down shift so that it moves more smoothly, and just kind of give it a little variety. Now I'm gonna go back to object mode. Oh yeah, and I got to say object shade smooth. So now I'm going to rotate this little piece around. And I'm going to make several copies of it. I'm going to try to move it into a few of these little spots here and there. Kind of look like Now save a little time, I'm going to select a few of them like this, and I'm going to hit Shift D, and then I'm going to go to edit mode. I'm going to go to mirror, mesh, mirror, and I think it's X. No, it's not X. Mesh, mirror, Y. No, it's not that one. Mesh, mirror, Z. No, but damn it. Well, I don't know. I'll just hit R and rotate them around because that's what I was trying to do. And see how I kind of just made several copies and just stuck them all on there on the other side to save some time. Alright, now object mode. Now really what I could have done, and I didn't think about it, I could just select all these that I just created. Let's do that. That'll be even quicker. I'll just select them all. And I'll pick that big one also. And duplicate them. Guess what I'll do? I'll go ahead and remove this big one and this big one here, and now I'll just take I'll just select them all. If you want to make sure you get everything that's behind something too, you see you got this toggle X-ray. If you got that on, it'll select everything in the front and in the back. Now I'll duplicate this. I'll hit R to rotate it around just a different way so that it's, you know, different. And well, you see there's no real rhyme or reason to this. It's all very random. Let me take a just select them all that way. Nope, damn it, I didn't select it right. I want to get these little ones again, and also, I don't know, maybe that'll be good enough. I think it might be fine. I was gonna make one more copy, but I think that'll be good enough for our bush. Let's just see how it looks in the game. Now what we want to do is combine them all together. So we're going to select the one on the bottom, And we're going to go all the way. We're going to get everything except the car over there. And then we're going to go to Object, Join. So it's just one mesh. Now I'll show you how to do the LOD for the LOD distance and stuff too. Now, do you want to collide with the bush, or do you want to just go through it when you hit it? I mean, that's up to you, but I'll show you how to make a collision for it also. Let's just name it New Bush. Since we joined these all together, it took the name of one of the other duplicates, so we just have to rename it again and make sure that the texture is, yeah, New Bush. Now we can get rid of the car now, we don't need it. Now what I want to do is make sure that this is going to spawn in a way that if I want to use it in the forest tool, it's already positioned on the ground the way I would like it. But just to give you an idea, I'll put this on the ground, so just say this is the ground in the game, which it's not, but this is just for reference. Now when the bush draws, you know, my intention is to have part of this kind of in the ground, because I didn't like make a base for it. There's not no sticks coming out of the ground, so I'll kind of have some of it hiding in the ground a little bit. You don't want it floating in the air. You don't want it too far in the ground, so that's kind of the idea. But this ground is, if you look at the side view, is either like this red line, or if you're looking from another view, it'd be the green line. That's your ground plane. So what you do is you click on your object, you say Object, Set Origin to 3D Cursor. And then you go to Object, Set Origin, Geometry to Origin. Alright, now this is where you position it where you want it to be. Like the green line is the ground plane, or if you're looking from the other view, it's the red plane, or if you're in this view, well, you just kind of got to eyeball it and see where the ground's at. And you find a place you're happy with it. Yeah, Object, Apply All Transforms. Then it's kind of set there. Now, to make it a different LODs, you're going to add to the name at the end of the name an underscore, and then you're going to put the letter A and then 300, which the number represents the size it is in pixels. So when it's 300 pixels large, it's going to render this quality. Now to reduce the quality, you got to go over here to the little wrench, add modifier, and say decimate. Now it's currently 1,883 faces or polygons, whatever you want to call them. The ratio is the amount of polygons it's got. As you reduce it, it'll basically become nothing at some point. So we're only going to do one LOD change, and we're going to drop it down to, say, I don't know, 263. It still looks like a bush. It doesn't look bad. But I didn't tell you to do something first. Got to duplicate it. The duplicate is the one that we're doing this monkey wrench modifier, this little wrench. This is the one we're going to decimate. We're going to drop it down till we get around, you know, we drop it down enough so that it still looks like a bush, and it's, you know, not too bad. But keep in mind the other bush is still drawing too, so you can click on the eyeball to remove the other one's detail level. That way you don't wrongly assume that, well, it still looks good. Well, you're seeing the other bush also drawing, so I guess about 250. It still looks alright. And you want to go here to this little thingy, say apply. Now change the name of this one to say 150. And that's when it'll do its transformation, which don't really look a whole lot different. But Now the next thing is you got to go over to add empty plane axis. Do this 3 times. Name one of them base 00. Name the other one start 01. And name the final one BB underscore auto billboard 25. So when it's 25 pixels, I guess it's when it's 25 pixels in size, small, it'll just make it a 2D polygon. Like you see the trees doing when you get a little bit of ways from them. Now to make all this work, you got to hold down shift and you got to move start 01 into base 00. Then you got to move the BB underscore auto billboard 25 into base 00 by holding down shift and dragging it into there also. Now the next thing you want to do is put your bush, your 2 bushes. You can hold down shift and or pick one, hold down shift to pick them both, and then hold down shift and drag them into start 01. So this is what they'll look like. Collection, then you got the base 00, and then inside of base you got this BB auto billboard, and then you got start 01, and then inside of start 01 you got your 2 bushes. Now for the collision map, or the collision model, you don't need to make all this a collision. I used to like way too much stuff to, I know you don't care if you can hit this corner of this leaf or that corner of that leaf. So we're just going to make a generalized object by adding another mesh. We'll just make a cube, and we'll hit S, X, and Y. Or you can just hit scale and you can just pick these little bars on the side if you don't want to do the hotkeys. And we're just going to put a generalized box in here. It ain't got to be a perfect match, because really the box will collide a lot better, and some of these little corners will end up just snagging your car. I think that'll probably, let's move it up. So this is what you'll actually run into, this box. Alright, now we gotta name this COLMESH-1. Only hold down shift, and we gotta move this into here, into start 01. So now all we got to do is also remember the name you gave this texture here, new bush. We gotta make that texture in the game. So we're going to export this as a DAE. We're going to put it in our level that we're working on. I stick everything in my art shapes miscellaneous folder. But this is where you'll name the model. This is what the asset browser will show when you're looking for it. I don't know, I may already have a new bush in there, so I'm going to call this new bush 51. I'm going to let it copy the texture into there. And there it goes. So now I'll load the game. Now, before I bring that model in here, I'm going to hit F11. I'm going to make that texture new bush. See right here, material editor. New bush. No, not that. Yeah, new bush. Create. Alright, now here's the color map. I'll pick that map that was exported with that model. I don't know what the name of that texture actually is. Let me look. It's textures com underscore branches, or you can look in Blender. It's got the name. If you pick on the texture, go down to materials, it's got the name of the texture right there. So that's what I'm looking for. I'll start typing it. It should bring it up. Art states. They go in the right folder. There it is. Now you can open this little dedicated window here to see the texture, and use the right mouse button to move it around, or the wheel to zoom it in and out. But to make it transparent, we got to go down to advanced here, and we got to say alpha clip. And sometimes you have to give it more alpha clip to get rid of some of this stuff. Like you can see, there's like this little line. Sometimes you just got to give it a little more. Other times, not so as much. We're going to also tell it to be double-sided. That way we can see both sides of the bush. To receive shadows, and in lighting, anastrophic filtering. Now I didn't bother making a normal map for this. I can do that next, but just for now, let's get the bush on the ground, make sure it looks alright. We'll save the material. Now we can import in the model. Which, when you go in here, you got to click all models, and we called it New Bush 51. There it is. And there it is. Don't look that bad. Probably one of my better bushes. I mean, I ain't made really many. If you have my Ukraine track, you can go in the asset browser and look for one called Crazy Bush. It looked pretty crazy. Now you can see where I made some mistakes here. You see, like I wanted all these little stick parts to be toward the model, not like in the air out there like that, which they're right on this side. You know, they're correct here. But on this side, I think I just rotated them the wrong way. I mean, I can just stick the bush like that, really. Alright, now to like test it for the collisions, like that little invisible box, you don't see it. I'll just say rebuild collision here and edit rebuild collision. Now we can drive into it. I don't add collisions to my bushes. I put it in there in case you want it, but I mean, a bush ain't gonna do that to a car, you know. It's just not gonna do that. Now, the LOD, the changing of the size of the bush to the different detail level. If you say move the bush, let's move it in the air so we can see it easier. As you get away from it, it'll change the polygon. Like it just changed, right? You see it? It shifted from one detail level to the other, which if you do that, if you do a good LOD where it's changing polygon level, you shouldn't see it changing really. I mean, the idea is so that it changes detail level and you don't see it actually changing detail level. Which is, like I said, you couldn't really tell this anyway changing much. Now the BB Auto Billboard 25, you'll see that when you get real far away. It'll just become a 2D sprite. So let's start to fly away from it. Right there. Now it's just a 2D billboard. See it? It's just a 2D sprite. Like a billboard, so I call it a billboard. It's flat. And as you get closer, it'll transition to that first detail level, or rather the second one, and then as you get a little closer, it'll switch again to the other one. Now you can have many detail levels. Just remember that numbering is your the pixel size. It is. Now we're gonna put this in a forest tool, so we can just paint it with the forest brush. So we'll come over here to this spot, we'll go to our forest, go to this paint, then we'll go to mesh, add new mesh. Now we're going to locate it in our level. I called it New Bush 51. There it is. Now I'll go to brush, a new brush group. I'll double click on that, and I'll just call this the same thing, New Bush 51. Hit enter, and then add an element. Double click on the element, name it. I mean, you could have made like if you were gonna make 4, 5, 6 different kinds of bushes, you could have just called this bushes, and then have a different name for every one. You ain't got to name it the same thing. It's just what I did. So now I can paint that bush. No, I missed a step. Hold on a second. Move this out so you can see it. In the inspector here, when you create that element, you got to pick the forest item data, which is simply the mesh that you just created. So we called the mesh the same thing, New Bush 51, and we just got to click on this, and there it is. Now we can paint the bushes with the forest tool. You can start putting them all about. And you can change the scale so some are larger than others. And I won't go into all these. I went into all these in another video. So there you go. Now something else you can do, let me get out of the forest tool and go back into the material editor. When you select an item, which I made those forest items, which ain't gonna act the same, but the one that I hand planted over here, where'd it go? Oh, I moved it up in the sky. You got these different tabs in your material. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll go into animate and I'll just let it rotate or scroll. Now, since this model did not have, like I was saying earlier, there was not, like I was talking about Pac-Man, you go off one side, you come out the other. Since there's not any space on the sides, you don't have any wiggle room. So this really won't work well on here because it's starting to, as it's rotating, it's starting to redraw the other side, like I was saying. So, but if you do have extra wiggle room, you can do something like, you know, so you're seeing these little pixels pop up. You know, you can just do little things like this just to make it so it's a little lively. It's moving. It looks like maybe some wind gently blowing on it. Which that don't look too bad. That way it ain't just perfectly still. And this way doesn't involve the wind modifier that the forest tool uses, which you can make them animate, but then you gotta vertex paint them. But that's another video for another day. Or you can scroll. You don't have to rotate. You can have it kind of gently instead of rotate. You know, it's just basically shifting back and forth. Well, whatever works for you, whatever you prefer. That's just one way to do it. It's just really like a gentle amount, really it's more realistic, something moving a lot. Then you save it. Now I use Gimp for my photo editing stuff. So to make a normal map for it, you just all I gotta do is go to filters, generic, normal, and say OK, and then I'll export this. I'll just put a little N on the end, so it reminds me it's a normal map. I'll put it in there with the other texture. You know, that's where I put mine, art shapes miscellaneous. I'll stick it in there with that. Now I can, right here, normal map, pick that normal map. There it is. Now you'll see it have a little more like 3D look to it. You see? It's not so it's got a little more texture to it. So I'll remove it and you see the difference it makes. See, now I'll undo it again. Put it back. Now this isn't getting into the PBR material, so I haven't really messed a lot with that. I've only done a couple things. You also, in your advanced, you can, instead of doing the alpha clip, which is what we did to hide the invisible, you can do alpha blend and tell it like a lens alpha, and that'll also do. But when you got multiple layers of alphas on top of one another, it can start doing some crazy looking crap, where this kind of looks like a kaleidoscope where it's cut all these different things. Now I know in the PBR there's an actual there's another lens is Primo Alpha, which that didn't do what I thought it was going to do. Let me get back out of here. That's the one I used on my waterfall, but it didn't do the same on here. I gotta reload it. I'm not an expert on alpha layers and what each one exactly is actually doing, but I don't like the way it looks. That's why I use the alpha clip instead. So I think that's it. We got us a bush. Now the same way I made that bush is the same way that I made these trees. But these are like the first things I tried making, when I was kind of experimenting with different things. So I mean, I made these all the same way. I mean, that looks like crap there, but that's the same idea. I just took pictures of trees that had transparency backgrounds, and I was just trying to make like some background, trees. Wasn't too many polygons, but also would fill up a space nicely. Now my trees here, they don't change LODs like the game trees. I think the game trees look great. I just don't like the way the game trees change to that. Remember that two-dimensional picture that I showed you that bush turns into? Well, the game trees seem to do that when you're just a little bit away from them, and they start switching. I got these so that they don't switch at all into those. So like if you're taking screenshots or whatnot, you got trees a long way away, they're gonna still look the same. There may be a little more performance on, but hell, I mean, they're really simple polygons. I mean, how much performance can they really take, I mean, that looks like 1,000 little sticks, but it's really just a very, very basic I'll show you the wireframe. I mean, you don't even see the damn, there's like maybe 2 or 3 polygons in there. Well, more like 10 polygons, but you get the idea. There's not very many. So that's that. Thank you all. My latest little addition. Little rock shifter. Half the time you don't see the damn rock in there. Supposed to be a rock floating along. There it is. So when you animate BAE files, it's like they just show up when they damn want to. There's actually another one that drops right here, but you don't see it. And then on the camera in there you're seeing it. It's just crazy the way it just fades in and out of existence. Conveyor belt. So I guess that'll do it for this one.